right. Well, thank you everybody for joining today. I appreciate y'all tuning in. I'm Dr. Heather McIntosh from the Center for Career and Leadership Development. And today we're going to be talking about how to reach out to employers to create different types of opportunities. So, why this topic? Why did I feel the need to talk to y'all today about this specific topic? Well, honestly, a lot of internships are not necessarily posted online. Obviously, internships is something that a lot of our students are interested in. There are opportunities a lot of our students are trying to take advantage of, whether at our career fairs that we host and other workshops that we host. But one thing that I talk to students a lot about when I have appointments with them is that you don't want to just rely on what you see posted online. Some students, they'll just go to Indeed, or they'll just go to Handshake, or they'll just go to LinkedIn, and they'll type in something, and what they see, they think that's all there is out there. Well, that is not the case, honestly. A lot of employers don't necessarily post their positions online, or they might only post it on their website. They might only post it on certain job boards. And also, I've heard of a lot of situations where students will proactively reach out to employers and they'll actually create an internship for that student that didn't even exist. So I have those conversations a lot with students. And so it's important for students to know that you don't want to just rely on what you see on job boards and just blindly post stuff online just for when you're looking for internships. You want to explore all the different options, and reaching out proactively to employers is a really important thing. So when it comes to job shadowing, which is another thing we'll talk about today, those are never posted online. And sometimes for students in certain situations, job shadowing might be more feasible and make more sense for what it is they're trying to get experience on. It might be that they're debating and they're not quite sure they want to pursue a certain career path, or they're not sure they want to pursue a certain major. And internships can be helpful for that too, but sometimes that kind of step before is just to get a little glimpse, just to get a little glimpse into the workplace or into a certain type of career. And that's where job shadowing can actually be more beneficial than internships. And again, with those are never posted online. So that is something that is very good to proactively reach out to employers about if that's something you're interested in pursuing. Also, as you can see, different research, and honestly, some of the research I looked at was up to 70%. But a lot of opportunities, I think the more current one said 55%, a lot of opportunities are created outside of applying to jobs on job boards. They're actually through networking, direct outreach. And so that might be more than what people are thinking about. They might be like, oh, maybe only a small percentage are created that way. No, a lot of opportunities are created that way. And then also, sending a proactive inquiry to an employer, it shows initiative, it shows interest, and it could be that there maybe is an upcoming opportunity that they are going to post somewhere, but you're already going to get on their radar before they even post it. And then if they don't have anything at the moment, so say there's a certain company you're really interested in interning with, or maybe shadowing it, and you reach out, and they actually they're not able to accommodate that request at this moment, it still helps put you on their radar, because maybe something will open up down the line and you'll be one of the first ones they think of because of the fact that you proactively showed initiative and reached out asking for that opportunity. So a lot of students I know are probably hesitant to reach out to employers for various reasons. It might be that, again, talking about today, you might just not know how to do it. What would I even say? How would I even approach that inquiry? Like, what should I write? Is it unprofessional for me to proactively reach out to an employer? Will that seem like pushy? Will they think I'm bothering them? They might not respond at all. Like, what if I reach out to them and I don't hear anything? Or what if they respond and say they're not able to accommodate? These are a lot of reasons why students I know are hesitant to reach out to employers. But realize, I think of it, this is what I tell students in my student appointments with them. What's the worst that could happen? Say there's this company you're really, really interested in. You really, really want to, do some hands-on experience there if possible, or shadow someone. Like, you're really, really interested in this particular place. What's the worst that can happen by reaching out? They either won't respond, or they might say that they're not able to accommodate it, and they'll probably give you a legitimate, valid reason why. So understand that people are busy. If you reach out and they don't respond, don't take it personally. That's actually pretty common. I know once I was talking with a student, and she was trying to connect with people on LinkedIn. She was sending them messages about their opportunities, and she said that on average, she would hear back from like 1 out of every 4. Like recruiters that she reached out to. So just know that it is common that people get busy, they overlook emails, they might be getting a lot of different inquiries. it could potentially go into like a junk folder, a spam folder. There's a lot of reasons why. So don't take it personally if you don't hear back. Don't take it personally if they say no, because they'll probably give a reason why, of like, we just don't have the manpower for it, or, internships we've had in the past, normally they need to be paid and we just don't have the budget for it right now. I mean, it could be a lot of reasons, and they'll probably explain to you why. That being said, if you do reach out to a recruiter, an organization, an HR person about specifically like maybe an internship opportunity, if they possibly are going to have any openings in the future, if they'd be interested in taking on an intern or creating an internship, if they do have reasons for saying that they're not able to accommodate that at this time, they might offer what's called an informational interview, which is something we're going to touch on even more later as well, which is basically gives you a chance to find somebody who's in the type of career that you're really interested in, that has the role that you're considering pursuing, maybe what you're thinking about in the current degree program you're in. Like, I'm in this degree program because I want this type of job, and that's who maybe you reached out to about shadowing or interning. Maybe they're not able to accommodate it. One thing they might offer, or what I would say that you could ask about if they don't immediately offer it, is what we call an informational interview, where you can just ask to just meet with them and just pick their brain. 20 to 30 minutes. It could be virtual. It could be a phone call, of just being able to get more insight of like how they were able to get into that career field, what advice they might have, with you being in college, what specific things you should be doing to become better prepared or to get more of that experience. Conversations, and those could lead to like other referrals and maybe other places to look into that might be able to accommodate your requests. So consider that as well. When reaching out, if they are not able to accommodate shadowing or an internship. And then, of course, going back to what I said, I'll probably say it one or two more times, is that being proactive and showing initiative and going ahead and reaching out, even if they're not able to accommodate that specific request, it still shows initiative, and it might keep you on their radar when an opportunity does present itself down the line. So there's a lot of good benefits. So we're going to talk about 3 different types of outreach today, and I've already touched on all 3. The first is going to be reaching out regarding an internship opportunity. And so when it comes to reaching out regarding an internship opportunity, obviously there's a few specific reasons why this makes sense and why you need to consider doing it. One, again, I've already touched on already, a lot of internships aren't necessarily publicly posted. I mean, some are, but then again, some of them might be posted in a job board that you haven't looked at. Some might be posted only on that company's website and not on any outside job boards. And then a lot of places, especially like startups, nonprofits, often those are places that will be more open to even creating an internship potentially. So it could be that they don't have any right now, but they'd be open to taking on an intern when they weren't even thinking about it necessarily. When it comes to other types of internships, specifically like research-based, ones in academia, it's kind of expected that you would inquire about those through like an email communication. Those are ones that would be expected. You might reach out to that professor or faculty member or chair of that department and specifically ask that, and that is typically done through email. And then, kind of as I've already touched on, if it's a smaller organization, a local business, a small nonprofit or startup, again, oftentimes they might be not even necessarily thinking about internships at that moment, but those would be ones that would be more likely to take one on. And those would also be ones more likely to not have like a specific careers page on their website. You wouldn't see those posted. So even though it doesn't guarantee a response, it does increase your chances of potential opportunities when you do outreach like this. So to kind of break down, I guess you could say, a formula of how you would approach this type of internship, you want to make sure your subject line is very clear. Kind of going back to what I said a few minutes ago about how, people get busy and sometimes might accidentally overlook an email. That could be why you maybe would reach out and possibly not hear back. I would say one of the biggest things that could lead to that is a very vague subject line. So you want to be very clear in your subject line of what you're reaching out about. So I give a couple of examples here, internship inquiry, marketing student at MGA. Well, I mean, if I'm a hiring, manager or an HR person at an organization, I would think this is probably a marketing student at MGA, curious to know about internship possibilities. Instead of just saying like, internship question or something like that, or MGA student with a question, something like that. You want to make sure it's very, very specific, because that'll help it get noticed more and help it from possibly being overlooked. Then, of course, you want to, you don't want to make the email too long. I'll go ahead and say that. You don't want it to be a wall of text that's like 3, 4, giving them your whole background of everything and all the reasons that you're trying to pursue this. But that being said, you do want to make sure to directly identify like who you are, what school you're attending, what degree program you're in, why you're interested in this particular place, whether it's a specific person and their role, whether it's just a company in general. You want to make sure to say like, this is why I'm really interested in this opportunity or in any opportunity you might have related to this. And then like the specific area department that you're trying to get in or the specific kinds of experience or skills you're trying to develop. And then just to kind of continue on, you want to touch on, why you think you would be a good fit for that organization. Again, you don't want to go too long. This isn't the same as what we call like a cover letter or a letter of intent, which those are typically kind of like one single space, like almost full page. You don't need to go into like your full background and all your experiences and like pull like everything from your resume, which you don't want to do that with a cover letter either, honestly. But just touch on very briefly, maybe some of the reasons, that you would potentially look appealing for a place like that, or to further show your interest in that career or interest in that area. And then of course, and I talked about the two, don't oversell. If you don't have much experience, don't draw a lot of attention to that. That's okay, but don't draw a lot of attention to that. And then of course you want to end like with like, what is it you're writing them about? Like, what is the next step? Is it, I would love the opportunity to shadow somebody in this department? Is it, I would love, in this case, we're talking about internships. I would love the opportunity to potentially intern with this department or intern with somebody in this type of role. You can offer to share your resume. And I think I touch on it later that you don't necessarily in this email need to immediately attach your resume, because when you think about it, it's kind of, you're reaching out and it's kind of, you're doing a feeler of if they'd even be open to it. And you don't want them to have to read something really long, and then sending a resume kind of puts extra pressure of now they got to look over your resume. So offer to send the resume, but I would say in this initial outreach, you don't need to automatically attach it and tell them to look at it. So I give a couple of example emails, just kind of going through this, formula. So again, a very specific subject line, hi, Mr. Patel. My name is Jordan Lee. I'm a second-year computer science student at MGA. I'm reaching out to ask whether your team offers internship opportunities related to back-end development. So being very specific about what they're trying to gain from an internship, what they're trying to learn more about. I've been following your company's work on scalable data, recently completed a course on API design. I'm kind of skimming it. I'd be excited to learn more in a hands-on environment like yours. If internships are available, I'd appreciate any guidance on next steps. I'm happy to share my resume or project samples. So again, it's kind of lower stakes. You're just putting a feeler out there, but you're being very specific about the type of internship you're looking for, and you're being very specific about why you're interested in that organization. And those are things that are going to help and be important and show that you really have true interest. And so, yeah, that note, I knew I had it somewhere. That note at the bottom about offer to share your resume. You don't necessarily need to immediately send in these initial emails. And then this is one where a student might have even a little bit less experience. Again, being very specific in the subject. This is kind of an example of reaching out for like an internship, a research-based internship. My name is Emily Griffin. I'm a psychology undergraduate at Middle Georgia State. I'm interested in your research on cognitive bias and decision making. Again, making it very clear why they are the ones that you're reaching out to. Even though I haven't held a research role, I've completed coursework in statistics and research methods. I've assisted with data collection for a class project. I'm eager to apply these skills in a research setting. I'd appreciate any advice on potential internship or assistantship opportunities within your lab. So yeah, and that's a good way to approach it too, to say advice related to these opportunities. That could be a good way to approach it as well. So, any questions so far?
None coming in from online, but we give them the opportunity at any point to pass them.
Absolutely. Yeah. If at any point you have any questions, just put it in the chat. And I'll be happy. You don't necessarily have to wait to the very end. So I don't think you have to do that. Okay. So we've touched on job shadowing a little already, but again, job shadowing, this is a really important one to be proactive and do proactive outreach about. I actually touched on this in a session I did back in February about just all the different types of experiences students can gain, which we went over a whole bunch of different kinds. I remember I was, this was maybe a couple of years ago, I was at my doctor's office. It's a doctor I've been going to for 20 years. And he happened to have a college student with him, shadowing him that week. And he told me about it when he came in, for the appointment, like, hey, I've got this student from Mercer, shadowing me this week. And of course, me and my role, I'm interested in that because that had never happened before in any of my appointments. And it's a doctor I've been going to since I was a teenager. And so I asked her, I said, how were you able to line this up? And she was like, I just reached out to different places and asked, and this one agreed. So she was like shadowing them for that whole week. So that's one, like, pretty much for most all shadowing opportunities, that's how you're going to get them, is by proactively reaching out yourself and asking, whether it's through phone calls, whether it's through email, which is more the route that we're going to be talking about today. So it also can more often lead to a yes. Because for employers, as noted here, it's less formal, it's less structured, it is a lower time commitment. So typically, shadowing could be anywhere from, hey, could I shadow you for a few hours one day? It could be, could I shadow you for a couple of days, a week? It's usually like 1 day to a week is kind of the more normal time frame for job shadowing. When you think about internships, reaching out and asking an organization about internships, most internships are going to be usually a minimum of 8 weeks or so. 8 to 16 weeks is kind of the average. So think about, the difference between asking, hey, could you take me on as an intern, as opposed to, hey, could I come and shadow you for a couple of days? So much lower time commitment for them. And it's more likely to lead to a yes. But there's also just reasons why it might make more sense for you. So again, if you're still kind of debating the specific career field you're interested in and just kind of want to get a feel of it without having yourself to commit 8 to 16 weeks. Like, maybe you don't want to do that time commitment. Maybe you don't have the time to do that time commitment. Maybe you're already involved in like student organizations and you're taking a full load of classes, and maybe you have like a part-time job on the side. So you might not be able to have that time commitment. So it might make more sense for you. But shadowing can also easily lead to internship opportunities down the line. So if you shadow and you show real interest, ask a lot of great questions, show initiative, then they might be more likely to be like, let's take you on as an intern this summer. Let's try it out. And then, of course, in certain fields, I give this advice a lot to students who are in biology, like here at MJ, they're thinking about potentially med school, dental school, anything like that. This is the first step. So for certain fields, like, the first step really is to job shadow, especially if you're in your first or second year, because that's the other thing I'll say too, is if you're in your first or second year of college, internships, they're still available, but there might not be as many internship opportunities, because a lot of internships, not all, but a lot of them do prefer you to be in your third or fourth year. And there's reasons why I've talked about in previous workshops before. Sometimes it's because they'll lead to a job offer, so they want you to be close to graduating. It could be because they've already want you to have taken a good number of your upper level coursework in that field already, or in that degree program already. And so if you're like you're really excited, trying to get some hands-on, experience, but you're in like your first or second semester of college, more companies are going to be willing to shadow you more than an internship, because you might not be quite qualified for the internships, because they might just want you to be a little further along. So that's another reason why it made more sense for you. And then, of course, in certain degree programs, it's more commonplace as well. And the ones listed here, law, counseling, healthcare, those are ones where it's commonplace, and the places have probably done it before. So places you might reach out, like whether it's a specific hospital, whether it's a specific law office, there's a good chance they've probably taken on shadowing before. So yes.
Just an observation, not a question.
Sure.
A couple of years back, I had a very minor medical procedure done. And I walk in and I see one of the students who had been in my class the previous semester, his very first day of shadowing at that facility.
Yeah.
So that was sort of a weird experience from my end as the patient.
Right.
But he wanted to be in the medical field, and this was a chance. Was barely at the time, and he was going to be able to spend a week shadowing at this. So it was something, and this was over in Dublin, so it isn't only in Macon. It is.
Oh yeah.
It could be anywhere.
It could be anywhere. Absolutely. Exactly. Yeah. That would have been a little different too if I had personally known the one who was shadowing my doctor's appointment too. That would have been, yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, so it's a similar. You'll see, it's a kind of a similar process for sending that kind of request as opposed to an internship one. Just being specific about why you're reaching out to them, being specific about what exactly you're asking for. I realize I don't have a subject line there, but be specific in the subject line, similar to the internship ones. So here's kind of a sample email that one might use requesting job shadowing instead of internship. Dear Ms. Johnson, I found your contact information on Bibb County Chamber of Commerce website. I'm a sophomore at Middle Georgia State in Warner Robins. I'm pursuing a business degree. I have strong interest in nonprofit. After considering different careers and nonprofit management, I'm most interested in the work that basically you all do to promote businesses within their communities. I'd love to shadow you sometime in your office. In this email, they're just asking to shadow for a few hours one day. Because again, if you're worried about asking for too much of a time commitment for shadowing, maybe start off with the day, and then in that conversation, they might be like, oh, you could, it doesn't have to be a day. Like, sure, you can shadow me for a few days. But if you, again, I know sometimes there's that worry that you're bothering them too much or that it's too big of an ask. So if you're worried about that, start small. Say if you ask if you can shadow them for one day. And then, of course, if that goes well, they'd probably be willing to let you shadow them for several more days. So yeah, if you're open to this possibility, again, don't make any assumptions. Please, suggest a time that works best for you. Thank you for considering this request with appreciation. So this is kind of a sample one on how you would go about requesting job shadowing. So informational interviews, again, I've touched on those a couple times already as well. Kind of similar to job shadowing in a couple ways. It's a low pressure ask. And honestly, this is the lowest pressure ask of any of them because, informational interviews, on average, you might ask for half an hour of their time. You could ask for an hour. You could. But yeah, it'll be, 30 to 60 minutes. And like I said, 20 to 30 is kind of the more common time frame. I know I had a student once years ago asked to do an informational interview with me because they were trying to actually get into career development. And I actually think I agreed to meet with her for an hour. But you don't want to ask for more than an hour. 30 minutes to an hour. But yeah, it's very, very low pressure ask. And honestly, what I'll even add to this is that a lot of people are really flattered by that request, to be like, hey, I'm really interested in what you do, for X, Y, and Z. And because of that, I would love to be able to pick your brain and just get some advice, get some guidance. And again, that can naturally lead to maybe referrals or, other kinds of stuff. But they'll keep you in mind for maybe future opportunities. It could lead to some of those other good things we're talking about. But yeah, sometimes it makes sense to just reach out first and just start with hey, can I just get some guidance and advice from you? And again, this is one of those requests that oftentimes people are going to be more willing to accommodate because it's, it's flattering. I mean, I'm flattered if somebody wants to say I want guidance and advice from you about how to do what you do. Oh, what you do is really cool. I'd love to learn more about how you were able to get into this role. So in that sense, these often will lead to a yes. And then, of course, if you're still exploring majors, especially different kinds of pathways, and say you don't maybe want to commit more than a meeting, maybe it's I'm not even sure if I'm ready to shadow for a week. I'm not even that sure if this is something I'm interested in enough to do that. It could be for that reason as well. And then, of course, building those connections, you don't know who they know. And we'll actually touch on that in a later slide. They might be like, oh, well, this is what I do, but one of my colleagues, they do something kind of similar, but a little different. They might be an interesting person to talk to as well, because that overlaps with some of your other interests. You never know what that could lead to as far as other referrals, connections, mentorship opportunities. So yeah, informational interviews are also a very, very good thing to consider doing some outreach on. So, just another sample email, kind of following those similar steps as the others. Dear Mr. and Ms. So-and-so, as a sophomore at Middle Georgia State, focusing on creative writing and American studies. I found your name through LinkedIn. Kind of tells how did I find you? Because sometimes they might think that how did this person find me? So going and addressing that could be good. Through an MGA alumni group, wanted to contact you about information pertaining to careers in writing and criticism. Your experience would be insightful to me as I'm trying to choose my own career. Schedule permitting, hoping we could conduct a brief informational interview during this week to learn more about your career path. I would really appreciate any insight you could provide about careers in writing. I look forward to speaking with you. So yeah, kind of following that same kind of outline that the others did. So just to touch on informational interviews themselves, just very briefly, some of it is kind of similar advice for like any type of interview that you would go on. Obviously, one difference is typically if they're reaching out to interview you, they're going to provide you with dates and times. So that's one little difference. But yeah, just make it clear when you reach out about an informational interview, just make it clear like I am willing to work around your schedule, like any day or time that works for you, like I will try to work around. Don't be too specific of like, hey, can I meet with you this day? Can I meet with you this day and this time? Let it be open and let them know you're flexible to meet with them in a way that works best for both your schedules. Yeah, don't be super specific about the specific time frame you're trying to meet them. Obviously do research ahead of time so that you can go in with some thoughtful questions. They're going to be expecting that. You don't want it to be just like, oh, can you just tell me more about what you do? And that's all you got. You want to look at their LinkedIn if you can find it. Obviously, research the company's website to ask more questions about maybe company culture or more questions about like maybe different types of organizations they've worked at and the different experiences they've had. So yeah, you definitely want to do that research ahead of time. Come with thoughtful questions. Dress nice. Again, take it seriously. Take it seriously, because you're asking for their time. They're giving you their time. You want to be respectful, and going in, pajamas or jeans shows that, you aren't taking it as seriously. So you don't have to dress in a 3-piece suit, but try to dress a little nicer. Make sure to try and arrive a little early. This is kind of similar to any interview. And make sure you have a notebook and a pen, because hopefully if they're giving you a lot of, good advice and guidance, you want to make sure you're writing that down. So make sure to have a notebook and a pen with you. And again, kind of going off of the, like you don't know who they know. So are there other people that would be good to talk to? Are there other people, that you would suggest me possibly reaching out to? Ask for their business card so you can maybe follow up with them in the future. And then, of course, this is kind of, again, typical interview protocol in general is to send a thank you within 48 hours, to send a thank you for their time, reiterating, your interest, or if there are other opportunities that you're interested in, reiterating that. Like, I love the opportunity down the line, if possible, to maybe shadow you for a day or two. So you can also kind of, if there's other opportunities you would want based on that conversation, it's okay to mention those. Okay, so I touched on one or two of these already, but yeah, when you're reaching out to an employer, and again, at this point, we've been talking about it more in relation to like email outreach, which, is normally going to be the preferred way to go about it. Some of these I've touched on, but yeah, just kind of the common things you want to avoid, the common things you want to keep in mind to make sure that your email hopefully gets noticed and acknowledged and responded to. Because again, it could be that they actually read your email, but there could be reasons that they choose not to respond to it outside of accidentally overlooking it. So yeah, you want to be respectful, you want to be professional. So obviously do a greeting, good afternoon, so-and-so. You don't want to just go right into a message without a greeting. That comes off unprofessional. You don't want to go too long, because we're all busy people. We get a lot of emails every day, and some of these people you're reaching out to, you might not have any idea how many emails they get a day. So if I see a big wall of text, I tend to do that now. Like if I see a big wall of text in an email, I don't really want to read that email. Depending on who it came from, obviously I will. But if it's like a stranger I don't know and they're sending me a huge wall of text, and it might look like an ad for something, or it might not look personalized to me, I'm not going to be as inclined to immediately sit there and want to read it word for word. So try to still keep it brief, couple paragraphs on average, kind of like those examples I showed. Again, you want to take it seriously. You want to be professional. So don't be using text language, jargon. Make sure you're doing it where spell check is on, all that stuff. Again, the subject line, make sure that's specific. Be clear about what you're asking for so that there's actually a call to action on their end. Like, are you asking to potentially interview them? Are you asking to potentially shadow them for a few days? Like, make sure that they know by the end exactly what it is you're wanting a response about. And then, yeah, personalize it. All of the email examples show that you want to personalize it. Like, this is who I am, but this is why I'm reaching out to you. This is why I would specifically like to intern with you, interview you, shadow with you. Make that clear to them, because if it's just a generic, I can tell that you sent it out to a whole bunch of people, kind of like with cover letters, way, way, way less likely to get a response. And then, yeah, make sure it's a professional email address. Again, make sure to look over the grammar and spelling. And yeah, and again, and I mentioned that a couple of times too, like, you're asking. And make sure to be understanding about the fact that they might not be able to accommodate it. Like even though you're reaching out, it's not a given they're going to be able to accommodate whatever it is. So, don't reach out like, hey, I want to shadow you this week. Let me know what day works for you for me to start my shadowing. Like don't make the assumption that they're going to be able to accommodate. I'll put it that way. Don't make the assumption they'll be able to accommodate. Hopefully they will, but it's not a given. So, one of the things I talk to a lot of students about in my appointments is how do I go about finding someone who'd be good to reach out to about these things that we've talked about? Well, number one, I would suggest if you are looking for an upcoming internship shadowing type opportunity or, looking to do an informational interview, meet with somebody in the CCLD. We can, obviously go through some of the stuff with you, but you don't know who we know. In our office, we do a lot of employer events. We have a lot of connections. I, have done it myself where I don't just give students contact information, for a recruiter, but if I talk with a student and I can tell you're really serious about it and you're really passionate about it and you come off very professional and you've engaged with our office and you've got a good looking resume, I have done it before where I'll be like, I know somebody who might have an internship opportunity. I will reach out to that employer and ask and try to see if they're interested. And if they are, then I'll connect them with the student. After the student's kind of engaged with our office, I've been able to look at their resume and stuff. I did it last week, actually. I did it last week for a marketing internship. I was meeting with a student, and I knew an employer who had just reached out to me directly through my MJ email a few days earlier, asking if I knew any students possibly for a marketing internship. Again, I don't necessarily give the student the contact information right away, but we can maybe hopefully like help connect you with some connections that we have after talking with you. But we can also, go on LinkedIn and show you how to potentially find people on LinkedIn, which I know we talk about their LinkedIn and Handshake. There's ways to find hiring managers and recruiters on there. We can kind of help you identify in those appointments too. So yes, definitely reach out with us. We will meet with you virtually, in person. We have in-person offices in Macon, Cochran, and Eastman, but we can do virtually, obviously on any campus, anytime that we're available, we can do virtually as well. So yeah, definitely consider making an appointment with our office if you haven't, to try to, identify some potential people to reach out to. But also let people know you're looking. I've said it 2 or 3 times already. You don't know who people know. I mean, you can mention it to like faculty you have. You can mention it to academic advisors, to your friends. You could just randomly mention it to one of your classmates of like, hey, I'm looking for, an accounting internship. And they might be like, my dad's an accountant at so-and-so firm, and they're going to be taking on interns soon. I could like put a filler out to him. Like you just don't know who people know. So always be vocal about what you're looking for. Because yeah, the connections people have, like some of them might be in the exact, area that you're looking for. And then if there are certain companies in mind, like really specific organizations of like, no, I know I want to work here, or I know I want to do an internship here. Obviously at that point, maybe call the HR office, and just be honest, like I'm looking for experience related to this. Is there a specific point of contact I'd be able to email about this or reach out to about this? Yeah, HR is probably a good starting point if it's like a specific company. Of course, you could see if the CCLD happens to know any contacts first. You could definitely do that. But yeah, just reaching out directly to the HR office of a company could lead you to that good point of contact as well. So I've touched on LinkedIn a little. I'll go ahead and just jump to the bottom of the slide where it's like, in general, email is more often going to be the safer route. However, sometimes it's hard to find an email. A lot of companies, a lot of times they don't have public online directories. Some do, a lot of them don't. So it's not a given that you'll be able to find a specific email. But in general, especially if it's like for research opportunities with like faculty at MGA, I mean, obviously you would use email for that. Again, explaining that background of why you're reaching out, what you're interested in, offering to share a resume. That's obviously easier to do through email. So yeah, email is going to be what you're going to use for those things. LinkedIn is going to be more so if you can't find an email at all, if you're really having trouble with that, or if you're wanting to reach out specifically to like an MJ alum. That's kind of a more common way to do it because they do have like the alumni feature on LinkedIn. If it's, somebody that you see who's in a job that you would love to have and you eventually might want to ask to maybe do an informational interview or potentially shadow. Sometimes it is good to start out with just connecting with them on LinkedIn first before you follow up and do those other requests or inquiries. So yeah, just connecting with them on LinkedIn quickly first, that can be good strategy before emailing. And then of course, like, yeah, anybody you meet at career fairs or networking events, it is very appropriate to just connect with them on LinkedIn afterwards and do a quick follow-up that way. So those are times when it is kind of more commonplace to use LinkedIn. But again, in general, email is going to be the safer one when in doubt. So LinkedIn messages typically aren't going to be as long as those other type of email examples I told you about. Typically, LinkedIn ones are going to be 2-3 sentences, really brief, just kind of, letting them know who you are, maybe why you're connecting with them, or refreshing their memory on how you all met. And, that's why you reached out to connect again. So I have a couple of examples here. So again, to be short and sweet, just kind of reiterating who you are real quickly. And then in the other example, a follow-up of how they met you. So again, those would just be 2-3 sentences max. Now, I wanted to touch on this because, there could be situations, obviously like at career fairs, which our office obviously holds several of every year, where you have somebody in front of you that you want to ask about like an internship opportunity or shadowing opportunity. Like you might be able to get them right in front of you. And so when that's the case, it's kind of a similar formula to those emails, but that's when you would do what we call our elevator pitch. And so we have different handouts and resources on that on our website, but just to kind of go over it very, very, very quickly. That's kind of just this very quick, brief, think about how long it would take to talk to somebody from the time an elevator closes till the time you get off on your floor. That's where that name comes from, elevator pitch. So you might only have like 10-15 seconds, maybe 20 seconds ish, give or take. So just very quickly, like when introducing yourself to somebody who happens to be in front of you, like at a career fair or networking event, just kind of who you are, what you're studying, what you're looking for, short and sweet. So my name is, Heather McIntosh. I'm a student at Middle Georgia State University. I'm studying English. I'm really interested in communications and content writing. I'm looking for internships. That is typically how you kind of introduce yourself at career fairs, asking about those opportunities, and it follows that formula. And so again, it's called an elevator pitch. Our office, you can make appointments with our office to get help perfecting your elevator pitch so that you feel prepared. If you're going to go to any in-person events in the future where you think you might be able to talk to recruiters or people that are in your field that you might want to ask about these opportunities. So yes, I did want to touch on, that you might have them in front of your face. How would that maybe look a little different from sending an email? And then on that kind of note, calling. Obviously, there might be situations where calling and asking about these opportunities is appropriate. I would say in general, outside of like having them in front of you, doing the written outreach and the written communication is usually more often going to make more sense. However, if you've sent an email and you haven't gotten a response, following up maybe with a phone call, if you happen to have their office number, that could be appropriate. Again, when it comes to reaching out to a company and you're just trying to find a point of contact to email, calling HR and asking about that, that's perfectly fine. You don't necessarily have to email HR. Call and say, hey, I'm trying to find somebody that works in this department or this area that would be willing to take me on as an intern or to shadow. Calling HR, that's perfectly appropriate. Those really, really, really small businesses, sometimes it might make more sense to call, especially if you've already emailed first and haven't heard back. And again, when no email is listed, it could be that an email isn't listed. It could also be that you're not having an easy time finding the person on LinkedIn. So it could just be like both of those areas seem to kind of have come to a dead end. Then yeah, there's an office phone number or a main line to an organization. And at that point, yeah, why not? If you're really, really interested, at that point, pick up the phone and call and see if you can get somebody that way. But you want to keep it brief. There's a very brief script here, just again, kind of reiterating, kind of like an elevator pitch. But then, who might be the best person to contact regarding this type of opportunity. So kind of like that elevator pitch mixed with that call to action, that specific reason why you're calling. So again, you might be nervous, whether it's sending an email, whether it's calling, whether it's going to a career fair. You might always be nervous, like proactively reaching out about these opportunities. And that's common. That's fine. But I say just go for it. Don't wait until like the perfect time, the perfect moment. If you know you want to get these hands-on experiences soon, which, all of y'all should be trying to get as many as you can while you're in college. Again, whether it's a mixture of all three of those things, that would be even better. Doing some informational interviews, doing some shadowing, doing some internships, all of those will help get you that really good hands-on experience, help you learn more about career fields you're interested in, help you clarify career goals, help you build a network, help you build connections, potential referrals, and just, add experience to your resume, which will make you look like an even better candidate once you're ready to move on to those post-college full-time roles. And so, yeah, just go ahead, and don't necessarily wait for the perfect moment. Reach out, just go ahead and reach out if you're wanting to go ahead and start those experiences. And if you could start off small with a LinkedIn connection. That's probably the smallest one to start off with first, and then kind of build from there. The more outreach you do, the more you'll, be confident about what you're saying, what you're asking for, the more you might realize that, you maybe aren't going to hear back from everybody, and it's okay. It's fine. You'll kind of have those expectations already. And so, yeah, kind of doing that first step can sometimes be the more nerve-wracking thing. But once you start doing that outreach, again, what I said at the beginning, I'll say now. The worst that'll happen is they won't respond, or they'll say they're not able to accommodate for a specific reason. They're not going to be upset at you for reaching out. So that's the worst that'll happen. So that's not too bad, right? Otherwise, it could lead to some really great experiences and really great opportunities, and can only help you. So yeah, again, I've mentioned our office locations. We're in Macon, Cochran, and Eastman. Yeah, please connect with us. Send an email if you want. But obviously, Handshake, which I have the web address there, mj.joinhandshake.com, is where you go to make appointments with our office. You can do them in person or virtually. It can be on elevator pitches, internship search, job search, resume help. Obviously, if you're going to do that outreach, you want to make sure your resume is good to go, because they'll ask for it if they're interested, and you want to be able to send it right away, make sure we've looked it over. And so, yeah, you would do that on Handshake. It's also where our job board is, so you can actually look at internships that are posted through that. So any employer that reaches out to our office with internship and job, opportunities for our students, that's where they all go. That's where you can see our upcoming career fairs. Our next one's going to be in October. Well, we'll actually have a part-time one in Macon and Cochran in August. Our next all industry one will be in October. So you'll be able to see all of our upcoming career fairs as well. Connect with us on social media. And so, yeah, please reach out if you haven't, connect with us if you haven't. We'd love to talk to you and help you, in that next step, help you get those hands-on experiences.
We just have comments, not so many questions, but one of our colleagues reached out that taking the initiative to reach out resulted in multiple opportunities that she would not have had otherwise. And one of our student participants was called your presentation having lots of super helpful information and enjoy it.
Oh, great. Wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
So if anybody who's online has any questions, this is your chance. But if not, Dr. McIntosh, thank you very much. And this presentation, as well as the previous two in this series, will be available on our Beyond the Classroom YouTube page, link I put in the chat later this week. So thank you to everyone who participated.